strategy decks and system architecture, transformation either scales or silently breaks. Hi everyone, I'm Priya, and this is What You Know Inside the Leader's Mind. Today, I'm joined by Sham Arora, Chief Technology Officer at Tech Mahindra, a leader who spent decades across global banks and enterprises, driving large-scale transformation, simplifying complexity, and pushing technology to work for the business, not the other way around. Sham, great to have you here.
Thank you, Ria, and thank you for your very kind words.
Awesome. Sham, you have spent over 2 decades in global banking before stepping into your role as CTO at Tech Mahindra. From that journey, what's one mindset the banking world brings that the tech industry still underestimates, and one thing that tech industry genuinely does better?
Sure, I think there are a number of things that banks are kind of known to do differently because banks are in the business of keeping public money safe to start with, and of course then creating financial services around it. The number one thing that comes to my mind is the risk mindset. The risk mindset that the banks have allows the banks to basically have much better idea about every type of risk that's either on the horizon or currently influencing their business. And they actively manage that, right? So when I was a banker for a good 3 decades, that's what I was very actively doing at bank. And I think while it's the right mindset for the bank, from our tech company point of view, we do need to have a greater innovation mindset. I mean, I'll give you, for instance, one of the pains of the risk mindset. The banks would not be number one at doing most things, right? They would basically see something happen in the industry first, and then they would copy it, or they would try to be close adopters of that, whether it's technology, whether it's a trend, whether it is APIs, whether it is cloud, any aspect of it, right? Whereas as a tech company, we are the innovators, we are the pioneers, right? We sometimes create new things. So having that risk mindset is the right thing for the banks. Do we underestimate a risk mindset to some extent? I do believe so, right? So I think if we bring a bit of risk mindset as we do innovation, that's when we get to our strategies like AI delivered right? So for instance, now AI is a fantastic technology. You can go and do, it's almost becoming a general purpose technology today. But unless it is done responsibly, unless it is done right, it can also create havoc in the enterprises. And that's why I would say one of the biggest things that I work towards is how do we bring the right technologies which are grounded in the right architecture, which are grounded in the right safety, so that the clients are actually getting the outcomes they expect, but also in a risk managed fashion. What do tech industry do better? I think tech industry does a number of things better. I spoke about innovation as one, but again, the other thing I think we do particularly well is partnerships. Most banks are not able to leverage or create as many partnerships or play as big a role in the ecosystem that they operate in vis-a-vis where, for instance, Tech Mahindra operates in. So I think I'm really proud that we are able to leverage our partners very well, and we are able to make it a team sport to win together with the clients.
Well, honestly, I think the contrast is really powerful. All right. There's a belief we hear all the time. More technology equals faster transformation, and yet so many transformation journeys stall or fall despite massive tech investments. From your vantage point, why does this still happen?
First of all, it's an absolute myth that you spend more money on technology, or you get the most expensive toy from technology, or you engage the most expensive partner, that you're going to end up with the best outcomes. And that's absolutely not correct. And in fact, I would say most banks recognize that, most customers recognize that. But why do so many transformations fail, and why do we still see people having spent millions, sometimes billions of dollars, and then having to write off because the transformation program's just not taking off or just not creating the right outcomes? It's a question of, I would say, a wrong balance between execution versus planning and design. If the transformations are planned properly, they're designed properly, they're set in the right architecture, that's where you have, I would say, you create 60 to 80% better chances of success. Of course, execution along the way, managing change along the way, and ensuring that you have the right measures set throughout the journey is super important, right? So there's no replacement of a very, very solid program governance and management for large transformations. You may set up whatever governance. If you don't plan it well, if you don't design it well, and if you don't have it grounded in the right architecture, you can get it wrong. So that's one of the reasons, in fact, at Tech Mahindra, I lead the enterprise architect tribe, and I'm very proud that we are increasingly and more now seen as a value add players, right? So people are in fact calling us when things are not going right and saying, can you please help us here? Because we're creating a big name for us in the industry about a partner that's going to give the right solutions, make it, rightly grounded in the right architecture, and overall create successful outcomes. If done right and you spend the right time on each phase, then more likely you will end up with the right outcomes.
All right, I think that's a hard truth and a necessary one. Sham, now we're going to switch gears. We're moving on to this or that section. All right? Okay. Boardroom strategy discussion or deep dive technology reviews.
Well, actually, I enjoy both. It's very hard for me to say this or that because I've been a practitioner throughout my life. I grew up as team leader and a project manager, then running technology portfolios. So even, what gets me going the most is when I spend time with the team, whiteboarding, discussing backlogs, discussing problems and solving problems with the team. But at the same time, when I look at my strengths, my number one strength is strategic. So my top 5 strengths are strategic, achiever, focus, responsibility, and I think execution. So it just comes naturally to me that I would love to think strategic. I love to have strategy discussions, especially with CXOs. In fact, that aspiration fulfills itself very nicely because not only am I having, I would say, strategy discussions with, our leaders all the time, Mohit, Atul, Rohit, Amol, and several others. But at the same time, I'm also spending a lot of time having strategy discussions with the CXOs of clients, right? So every time they have a technology transformation to run, or they're thinking of an AI journey, or they're thinking of new product expansion or changing experiences, I'm in a number of such discussions. So it's really exciting and invigorating for me personally. So yeah, very comfortable doing both, and I guess there is a room to be made for both. I also think that one or the other kind of makes you dissociated with reality. So if you're only in the boardroom, you don't really know how things happen. That can be a problem. Versus if you don't know strategically where you're going or where you should be headed or where you could be headed, you could be underhitting. So I think a right mix and balance of both is super important, and I enjoy it.
That's telling. All right. Weekend with books or exploring a new city?
Right. I mean, books have a place and I love to read, but weekend, definitely exploring a new city. And I think I kind of love to just walk, also see new places, get familiarized with history, see the evolution of how things may have evolved, how buildings may have evolved, how, the houses may have evolved, etc. I think it also gives me some time to have a perspective and some thinking time.
One breakthrough product or one breakthrough team?
Absolutely team. I've done so many successful things with teams. I've built teams. In fact, I'm not sure if you know the story. So when I joined Standard Chartered Bank, it was a very small bank. We were only 30,000 people there. And I was given the task for building the entire transaction banking stack for the bank. I was designated and given the job of being the CIO for transaction banking back in 2005. When I was quite young, it was like, growing from a portfolio manager straight into being a CIO. And I literally created teams right from, architects, hiring project managers, doing project selections, product selections, ended up building a lot of the tech stack ourselves. And I really enjoyed that stint. And of course, we took the business from wherever it was to 3 to 4x in about 4 or 5 years. So it was very fulfilling. And of course, I think if you have a good team, you can almost tackle anything. Of course, new products can be built, or a competing product can be defeated, or a new trend can be adopted. So absolutely having the right team is essential for, I would say, most leaders.
Well, now we know why everyone loves you. Okay, a conversation with your younger self or with the next generation?
Again, there are times when I have times to reflect. I have to say that's not very often. I mean, that's only when I'm really thinking, why we are where we are in certain places. That's when I kind of reflect on that. But I really love spending time with Gen Zers and with the younger generation. I think there's a lot to learn from the younger generation. I actually think the kind of perspectives they bring, the eyes through which they see the world, the kind of hopes and optimisms they have, the worries they have sometimes. And that gives you a lot of time to reflect, think, and kind of even think about how to think of any problem from a very longer term horizon, right? So, because typically when you're making a plan, you're making a 5-year plan and then you're converting it to a quarterly plan and then you're executing on a daily basis. But how do you have a long-term horizon of where things are going? And I think that's the perspective you can only get when you keep in touch and keep in good connects with the younger generation. So my son's like now in college, he's 22, and every morning I spend at least 15 minutes speaking to him. He's in Canada, so it suits the time zone suit very well. And of course, I connect with any and almost every younger generation people I get in my team or other teams. So I really enjoy that.
Well, that one matters. Okay, now we are moving on to the fun segment. Quick thinking, no over engineering, whatever comes to your mind first. The first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
One thing people assume about CTOs that's completely wrong.
That CTOs worry about tech. Actually, CTOs worry most days about business and they use tech in the service of business.
Fair enough. Gen Z workforce.
Let's worry about today.
Interesting perspective. If tech disappeared for a day, what would you be doing?
I would go out trekking with my daughter and my son.
I love that answer. One person who has silently influenced your leadership style the most.
I actually think there's more than one. So I think the first one is Steve Jobs. The reason I really like Steve Jobs and I think he's very inspirational is because he had almost like limitless imagination. I think he had huge amount of curiosity and ability to learn. He also didn't care about what he was learning about, right? And I think one thing he said that was really interesting and that stuck with me, which is don't worry about what you're doing today. It all comes together. Even if there are dots that are being created, sometimes the dots join in future. And I really love that sentence because you don't really know sometimes why you met somebody or why you're, with a partner. But if you are making good relationships, if you are generally doing the right work and headed in the right direction, you don't really know how sometimes come together and have an exponential impact. So I really love that about him. I love Jeff Bezos for a couple of things. I think one is his almost acute client focus, and two, his yearning to get nearly things perfect or getting things right? So, in fact, the famous saying is he would tell every part of the company to produce something in a manner that if the other part of the company didn't want to buy it from them, that's fine, which means they have to be able to compete against everything that's out there. More recently, I've started, loving the style of Anish Shah in the way he talks about, think big, do less, execute flawlessly. And I think that just can keep you so well grounded and so well focused. And I think it's just, the outcomes are showing in the way our group is operating, in the way TechCamp is operating as well. And of course, I'm sure they're going to show more and more.
I think that's supernally meaningful. Okay, final question of the day. If a young professional watching this conversation today remembers one thing from your journey, what should that be?
Create value and impact. Everything else will follow.
That was quick. Okay. Sham, that was the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for the honesty, the clarity, and for reminding us that transformation is as much about people and choices as it is about technology. It was great to have you here. To everyone watching, this was Inside the Leader's Mind. We'll be back super soon because at TechM we are #.
Limitless together.